So here we go with day 3 of the Sector 39 Permaculture Design course. We've already hopefully taken you on a journey now. You're starting to realize is we want to make changes in the world. This is a design process. We want to move forward. We also, number 3, principle 3, is a very, very interesting one, obtain a yield. It's recognizing that we all have needs. The icon for obtain a yield is a turnip or a vegetable with a bite taken out of it. So whoever picked that vegetable needed to, take some of it for themselves. That energy return is what drives the world forward, right? Everybody, I like to say, everybody needs breakfast, or as David says, you can't work on an empty stomach. You know, especially if you want to do sustained hard work. I know of yogis who can sit in a cave and meditate for days on nothing but a rose petal, perhaps, but to do hard work to meet needs, we need inputs. Everybody needs breakfast. You can't work on an empty stomach. Now, we've taken ourselves on this journey. We're saying nature's our teacher. We are learning through observation. We are allowing ourselves to ask questions and to let go of some of the fixed ideas that we might have had in our heads because they've been kind of given to us, perhaps, or put upon us. Test them out a bit. Let's find it out. Let's observe and interact. Allow nature to teach us new lessons. To allow nature to give you fresh insights. What is it that nature is doing? Everywhere you look, nature is covering every surface it can in green, in chlorophyll, in living, breathing matter that can translate that solar energy for coming in into stored carbon, into sugars and carbohydrates. A constant process of grabbing hold of CO2 out of the atmosphere, utilizing the carbon, binding that together in a way in which it becomes a stored form of energy, and then giving out that oxygen, which now enables us to oxidize that energy and to access it when we need it. It's a beautiful system. So everything is feeding off everything else. This is another very important thing. So within our design systems, we have to think about we need to create yields for everyone, for every part of the system. So instead of perhaps regarding some of the elements of the system as being annoying or problematic, oh, the birds are stealing my fruit. What we have to understand is the birds are also part of the system that built the fertility that gave you the fruit in the first place. Maybe they're entitled to their share. Um, I get ahead of myself, but this is and also obtain a yield. This is the one that's about gardening, or this is the one that's about how we extract energy from the universe to sustain ourselves. And we're not all gardeners. A lot of us, you can go to town and you can get a job, you can sell your intellect, sell your art, but whatever it is that you do, you need to obtain a yield. So now this is the relates, I think, to the key again. This is such a key question to ask. So I say this is about having needs, isn't it? We need to feed ourselves. Now, there's a confusion in the world between wants and needs. And when we experience adversity, pardon me, we start to suddenly realize the difference between wants and needs, things that are nice to have, things that we absolutely must have. So, as we know, have experienced the pandemic has reminded us enormously, perhaps, about areas in our lives where we might be most vulnerable and areas in our lives where we are least able to meet our own needs because our society economy has been fractured by this event. Okay, so behind me, the image that I've floated behind me, if that's working for you, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this is an interesting thing. And Maslow, he was some like clever geezer from 100 years ago or so. And actually, this sat within a much bigger philosophy, which I don't claim to know anything very much about. I think it's interesting to think about it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs suggests this. Maybe at the pinnacle of that, the apex of this, is our greatest achievement, the greatest thing that we can do is, if you like, our need is self-actualization, to fulfill our potential as human beings on this planet, to contribute in the best way that we can, to enrich society, enrich family, enrich culture, by being the best that we can. Self-actualization. Yeah, we're not thinking about that, are we? When there's been an earthquake and a flood and our house has been swept away and we're stripped of our clothes, we're naked and frightened and hungry and cold, and we don't know where our next meal is coming from. We don't trust the person who's looking at us from across the way. Um, all of those lofty goals fall away. All we want is to get out of danger, to get out of the firing line, to think about the many, many displaced people who already been displaced by refugees, from war, from climate change, from earthquakes, from tsunamis. When we were displaced, it becomes very clear what our priorities are. And there's a degree of safety and security and clustering together, perhaps with people that we can probably help find ways we meet our needs. But even that can break down when, depending on the adversity of the situation that we're in. But we still have to eat. We still need to keep ourselves warm. We need to get out of the extremes of the weather. We need shelter. We need to kind of raft together in a kind of survival situation. So there's very clearly, in terms of yields and what and meeting needs and fulfilling needs, there's a hierarchy of need and strategy here. And no, especially in the Western world, we get very confused about what our priorities are, and sometimes we forget about perhaps even good food and nutrition and things that really sustain us, and get lost in having the right shirt or the right trousers or a car that makes us look like we have status in society. um, and some people would do anything that they could to protect their status in society, going without the food or the other essentials perhaps, which is ultimately not sustainable. Okay, so we're meeting needs, but we're meeting needs with a sense of strategy. And um, the first person's needs that we're trying to meet is our own, because I can't work on an empty stomach. Um, so, and this sits very closely with the first of the three permaculture ethics, which is very much so about meeting needs and setting limits. The first ethic of permaculture is don't be greedy. Don't take loads more than what you need, and be conscious that by taking more than perhaps what you need, other parts of the system will become deprived, and then that system becomes weaker as a result. Um, okay, let's look at the words. A yield. So we're talking about a profit or an income. And profit and income functions as a reward, and that in itself encourages, maintains, or replicates the system that generated the yield. So, in other words, the more my garden gives me food, the more that reinforces the behavior of gardening. The more my compost heap flourishes, the more that gives me incentive to make more compost. The yield supports that function, and we get something that feeds off itself. Again, we're always looking for these kinds of synergies in permaculture. So, in this way, successful systems spread, um, especially when we're judging by observing and interacting and meeting needs, not getting too confused by sort of this abstract modern world that we're in. So, in systems language, these rewards are called positive feedback loops, and that they amplify the original process or signal. So, if we're serious about sustainable design solutions, then we must be aiming for rewards that encourage success, growth, and replication of the solutions. So, in other words, we don't want to tangle everything up in patents and ownership. We won't allow people to copy and paste ideas and try them out for themselves. And what's, of course, the nature of the world is, if I copy someone's set of ideas and apply them myself, is I'll come up with something different because I have a different skill set and I have a different set of resources, and the wind was blowing in a different direction on the day that I did it from you. So that's also then how ideas are improved, and how they translate and evolve. So the proverb reminds us that of the importance of creating a yield to sustain oneself. This relates to the permaculture ethic of setting limits to consumption. We can only be sustainable when we meet our own needs, but whilst creating a surplus for reinvestment. So you've got to meet your own needs, but you've got to have something left over to invest back into the system, so the system itself can develop and grow. So our aim as permaculture designers is to create solutions that can easily be copied and replicated. We're trying to create patterns which can then easily be absorbed and replicated. There we go. Introduction to principle 3, and we'll be looking at all sorts of different ways to obtain yields. We're looking at growing systems, especially, yeah, it's a wonderful day and a wonderful theme, and I thank you for being part of it.